Hey Archery Talk, this is Lucas, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about buying used bows. Realistically, the best case scenario, if you can do it, is go to your local pro shop who will hopefully have some used bows available for sale that you can actually physically hold and maybe even try out and shoot a couple of arrows through just to get a feel for. That is the ideal scenario, but truthfully, if you're looking for a specific bow, the best place to find that specific bow is probably going to be in the classifieds, either of ArcheryTalk or Facebook groups. I've bought myself several bows from the classifieds from ArcheryTalk, including this old Hoyt Vantage, which was purchased 4 or 5 years ago for a cousin of mine who wanted to try target archery and never really ended up doing it much, so that's beside the point. And so I guess I've got a little bit of experience buying used from the classifieds on sight unseen, and I guess I've got some tips for you on what to look for when you're trying to buy that bow, especially one that you can't see in person. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking for that used bow is try to find one in your settings. You want a bow, if you're looking for a 60-pound bow and you're only seeing one out there as a 70-pound and 70-pound limbs, you probably should stay away from that, especially if you're thinking, oh, I'll just replace the limbs and still come out ahead. New limbs are expensive, and trying to find the right used limbs, it might be a bit of a pain in the butt. So if you can, you really want to focus on finding those limbs that are going to fit you without having to go through a bunch of hassle. And same with the draw length. Again, if you're looking for 29-inch draw length specifically, and I still think you want a bow, even if you know your draw length, I still think you want a bow with some adjustability, because every bow is a little bit different. And if one bow you might want to shoot at 28.5 inches of in that module, and some bows you might want to shoot 29.5 inches, just depending on how the bow feels and how the bow measures out. Like a Matthews bow, for example, is typically about a half an inch longer draw length than is listed. At least that's how they measure it. And some other ones like Bowtech are usually bang on. So it really depends on the type of bow you're getting. But I would like something with some adjustability. So a bow with a rotating draw length module is perfect. This one, for example, has got 2.5 inches of draw length adjustability. And if you've got some cams that could be changed with a module, that's pretty good. They're fairly affordable, usually $40, $50. You can find a module replacement. You might even be able to trade yours in the classifieds to somebody else. But if you've got draw length specific cams, that's something I would probably shy away from unless you are very sure of your draw length. Because again, you need a whole new top and bottom cams. That could be $100, $150 or more. So that's an added expense that you might not want. So I would probably stay away from draw length specific cams. So with the measurements sorted out, the next thing you should probably look for is photos. When you're looking at an online classified bow, there's probably 1 or 2 photos of the bow from a nice long distance so you can see the bow all set up. I would request many additional photos so you can verify certain areas of the bow are still in good shape. The first area for me to look is the cams. Especially this bow has pretty stout small cams. It would be hard to see any damage, and even if they would be unlikely that they would be damaged. But if you've got a bow like a hunting bow, for example, with a big giant aggressive cam, there's lots of little arms that stick out. So if the bow has been dry fired, you might see some slight bending or even cracking on those. And you really want great details, and don't be shy about asking for photos. If the seller is serious and the bow's in good shape, the seller won't have any problem giving you the photos that you want. So just look at those cam photos very carefully to make sure there's no warping or cracking anywhere along those little arms that's sticking out in the cams. Another concern is going to be limbs for everybody, and that's probably the biggest safety concern for a bow. You want to look, again, close-up shots of the outside of the limbs and on the inside of the limbs, top and bottom, and check very carefully. And again, if the seller is not wanting to provide you with these kind of photos, go somewhere else. Things to look for, again, any signs of deep scratches or flaking of the carbon or little gouges that the bow gets banged around, especially a hunting bow, they get treated aggressively because people hump with them. So if it's taking a little chip out of the corner of the limb, that's something to really pay a close attention to. And if you're seeing damage like that, you either need to talk that seller down or move along. I would really vote to move along, because having damaged limbs and trying to replace them, it could be a couple $100 to get new limbs for a bow. And if you're buying a used bow to save money, then what's the point of spending all that extra cash on repairing damaged limbs? Just look somewhere else. I'm sure you're going to find a bow that's going to fit you well. Another thing to pay close attention to when buying a used bow from the classifieds is the strings. My general theory on this is if you're buying a used bow, you're probably going to want to replace the strings and cables. Yeah, that might be just a sunk cost. So if the bow is $400 that you're buying, plan on spending that $80 or $100 on a new set of strings and cables. But you know, if a lot of times they'll sell it, they say, oh, these are almost brand new, so you might be able to get a season or two out of them. But I would almost kind of write in that sunk cost of replacing the strings and cables, because you never know how someone has treated them, and so if a string's it might have a nick on it, or just might have been poorly taken care of in general. So I would consider just adding another $80 or so onto the cost of the bow, just to think about replacing the strings and cables. Another thing to consider when buying from the classifieds is the seller's reputation. Now, if you're buying from the ArcheryTalk classifieds, again, which I've used many times for many things, every seller basically has a rating. So if they've sold, they'll tell you how many items they've sold, and they'll tell you how many people are happy with the transactions they've had with that seller. So if you see somebody with less than 100% satisfaction, go in there with some skepticism. And if they have no transaction history, you might not want to buy a bow from somebody who has zero transaction history, unless you have a chance to maybe meet them up in person if they happen to be in your area. But if you live in Michigan and they live in Texas, that's not going to be possible. So I think taking advantage of those feedback ratings in the classifieds is a huge thing you should consider. And a lot of people, there's people out there buying and selling bows all the time that have those are the guys you probably want to deal with the most, because they have, again, the most feedback and the most reliability, at least with the people on the forum. Another thing to look for, especially if you're looking for a whole new setup, is trying to buy a bow completely set up with everything ready to shoot. You'll find a lot of those in the classifieds, and that's really handy if you're, let's say, looking for your first target bow. So you've had a hunting bow for years, and you like using that for going in the woods, but you want to try target archery, and you don't have anything. Finding a bow like this, which my cousin again purchased for I think $450 or $500, had everything ready to shoot. Not only does it have a target bow from a reputable brand, had a full target sight, stabilizers, arrow rests, everything ready to shoot except for arrows and a release aid. So you can save yourself a lot of money and aggravation by not having to go and buy those things individually. On the downside, if you are just looking for a new target bow and you already have another one, you don't want all those accessories. Almost every seller will offer you a bare bow price, and that's the one you're going to start your negotiations with. But again, if you're brand new to things and looking for a full package, it's nice to have that all at once to get, you can get an enormous bargain and save a ton of money doing that. One of the great things about the ArcheryTalk classifieds is there are a lot of people on there who buy many bows every year and then try them out for a month or two and sell them. And so you can get, this is March 2020 right now as I'm shooting this. You can find 2020 model year bows already secondhand on that site for hundreds off the MSRP from people who just like to kick the tires for a little while and try a new bow. And you can end up saving a ton of money, especially for those people who are looking for that bow that's going to make them a perfect archer. And they always realize that bow's not the one that does it. I've yet to find the one that makes me one. So you can, it's a great way to save some money and still get fantastic bows. Again, I've bought multiple bows and I've never had an issue with them if you do your homework. Now that we've kind of covered all the things that you maybe are danger signs to look for when buying a bow, there are a couple things I'm not all that concerned about when I'm looking at used bows. And one of them is maybe is the condition of the paint on the riser. If there's a couple scratches, I don't care about that because it's not going to affect the performance of the bow. And if I'm buying a hunting bow, the deer's not going to notice if there's a scratch on the riser, or if the paint is flaking here and there. Not a huge concern of mine. If your mileage may vary, but I wouldn't be concerned with a little surface issues on the bows. Archery equipment, they're tools. They're used all the time. If you shoot target archery, you're shooting hundreds and hundreds of arrows a week. If you're hunting with your bow, you're taking it in the woods, it's getting banged around with the trees. Things are going to happen on the surface level that aren't going to affect the performance of the bow. That might affect the resale value, but they're not going to affect the bow's performance. So I wouldn't put a lot of time worrying about that kind of thing. All right, I think that's about it, Archery Talk. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel an awful lot. And if you're in the market for a secondhand bow, don't worry so much about it. Just go check out the classifieds and try to find the bow that you want that'll help you get started in archery or at least continue your journey. And hopefully we'll see you out on the range.